Welcome to the Gnostic Rebellion. I'm your host, Paul Joseph Rovelli from the Gnostic Church of Light. Today we're speaking with Kyle Mays, an holistic iridologist, teaching that the eyes are both the windows of the soul and of the body. And we will introduce him in a moment more completely. But first, if you look right below this video in the description, you'll find a donate link that not only supports this program, but the work of maintaining our historic building and congregation. We're the first fully owned and operating Gnostic church on the continents of the Americas, and your donations are tax deductible. Okay, with that, I will give a blessing while you reach down and make that donation. Uh, May wisdom and divine providence increase the unique genius of our congregation and bring us to health, wealth, and increase of days. Okay, then. Kyle Mays, a student of the semi-enigmatic Amish iridologist Reuben Schwartz, also a student of Dr. David J. Pezic. Kyle believes the true nature of healing begins on the spiritual level first, then into the mental and emotional levels, and finally into the physical body. Kyle, welcome to the Gnostic Rebellion. Please introduce yourself and start off. We're really interested in seeing how you come to connecting with Reuben Schwartz.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. You've already kind of introduced me. I'm Kyle Mays. I'm a holistic iridologist that lives in Amboy, Washington, via Kentucky, which is where I met Reuben Schwartz. Gosh, I guess it's going on 25 or so years ago. I think I was 19 when I met him. So he's an Amish man that lives, in the country, in the backwoods of Kentucky. And for several years, I had heard people talking about this. They referred to him as everything from an Amish doctor to a Mennonite doctor to an eye doctor. And at the end of the day, he's an Amish iridologist. And so I was just fascinated about what I was hearing. And you have to write a letter to make an appointment. You can just drive out there and show up, but you may be waiting as long as all day if there's people there with appointments. So I did write a letter, made the appointment, and it was set up for about 2 weeks later. And I drove out there, and I was already familiar with the Amish, but people who have never grew up around those kind of people would probably have their minds blown that you're taking a trip back into the 1800s and maybe even farther back than that when
We
you
have Amish and Mennonites around here as well as Quakers.
yeah. So it's definitely a travel back in time, and so. Just sat down with him and was just fascinated from the start of someone looking into my eyes and telling me that they're seeing levels of health and strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And they're prescribing herbs, if that's the proper way to say it. And they were making a lot of their own herbs. And so, that led to me maybe within the next year or so going to one of his seminars. He would put on like a half day seminar teaching the basics of iridology. And from that point on, I just kind of hobbied with it. I would do it occasionally with friends and family. Never really increased my study much at all. And I think it was in 2013, after all those years, I something called to me and was like, I want to get back into this. I want to go a little deeper. And I was just curious of what it was like, to look it up online and see if there were other people, if this was just, something that was really a unique thing that the Amish were doing or what. And that's when I came across Dr. David J. Pezic and the International Institute of Iridology. And I sent a message and got a phone call direct from Dr. Pezic, and he really encouraged me to come to his level one that he was putting on pretty soon in Atlanta. And that's when I kind of got cracked open on the whole iridology thing altogether. And he had coined the term holistic iridology and was the first person to really make any advancements to it. I would say in the last 50 years at the time. It was around 2002 when he made some changes to the chart. And he did that via a blessing from Bernard Jensen, who is, very familiar. Most people know him as the modern, iridologist of our time. He was really big in the 80s. and into the 90s. But he kind of took Dr. Pezic under his wing and taught him a lot of things and then gave him his blessing to add his piece to it. And so his piece to it is that he was a psychiatrist for over 40 years. And during that time, he is looking, and what I think ended up before he passed last year, almost 8,000 pairs of eyes while also looking at it from a psychiatrist's perspective. And so he incorporated a lot of thoughts and emotions on this because a lot of things associated with iridology we know now are predispositions. I would say probably 80% of what you would get in an iris report from me is based on things that you came into this world with. So it's not always a current ailment or illness or anything or dis-ease that you're dealing with right now. And so when you talk about the thoughts and emotions, it's a way of letting you know that, if you're someone who's holding on to a lot of anger and resentment on a regular basis, that's not going to serve your liver well, no matter who you are. But if you're already of a predisposed weakness that shows up in the iris for the liver, it's going to be recommended that you honor that anger and resentment and move it in a healthy way
Well,
and hold on to it.
I think we find in family situations, think of how many families you know just from being alive, and you can see emotional distress passed generationally. You can see,
Yeah,
mom and dad put it on the kids, and they got it from their moms and dads, who got it from their moms and dads. So,
yeah.
the Hatfields and McCoys 18 generations later still hate each other for no damn good reason. Um, but, you know, in the more complex structure of our psychology as human beings, I think we see that that also connects with physical traits. Big bone people tend to have big bone kids, and I'm being as polite as I can, being a little on the big bone side myself to a point. Um, but you see that there's food shared. So I'm getting at the physical and the emotional, and then I want to tie the emotional really into the spiritual, because you seem to want to express all of that in your work.
Yeah, I mean, I think any of us who are on a path towards healing or trying to, you know, dig into something that's feeling like it's weighted down and it's heavy on our hearts, that if you don't acknowledge a higher power and seek an understanding and connection with that, I don't think it's a very easy path for anyone. Like, I think that's where it has to start. And it doesn't have to be complicated or deep if you're unfamiliar with it, if you weren't born believing in God or a higher power. It is just an acknowledgement at the beginning and a prayer of, this, all you got to do is walk outside and easily tell that there's something bigger than you out here in this world that's been here way before you got here and will be here long after you're gone. And that's just nature in itself. I don't even like referring to it in nature after reading about some of the indigenous ways that they didn't even know what that word was. They were so connected to it that they
Yeah,
just
but
didn't
we we
refer to it
we
as something else.
yeah, we live in an artificial world. We live in the um, and I'm not trying to say that to deride it in any way. I think that's the sophistication of our culture. That's also, doubled and tripled our lifespans and gave us much healthier living. A lot of people complain about the smog caused by automobiles. And before that, it was horseshit on the street that you dragged into your house. No wonder we died at an early age.
Yeah.
So, I think it's beautiful to call it nature, and I like the idea of you deciding to connect with that. I think that is, a first spiritual approach. Ralph Waldo Emerson writes, Henry David Thoreau, Walt Whitman. These guys are all over nature,
Yeah.
you know. So, and that's where our church is situated, by the way, in the same woods where the Transcendentalists did their thing.
Hmm.
So I like that. Now, um, you state that um, people can be made aware of their conscious and their subconscious thought, as well as emotional behavior patterns. How do you go about describing that to your patient?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what you were talking about, where we're angry and resentment. And you were when you were talking about the big bone and stuff like that. It goes beyond us, is what I'm trying to get people to tap into. When you were talking about that, I pulled this up earlier. I've got this chart that kind of shows what it's like, and that's you at the top. 62 ancestors that we know of that we're carrying. And so, when you're carrying something from a great grandmother, you don't really know. It's an unconscious thing that's happening, and you may not have even had a good relationship with your mother or father that's that close to you. And so a lot of this stuff is unconscious, subconscious. Everything is flowing through you from people that you've never
So
known.
am I holding some of the subconscious or unconscious thoughts of, say, some grandparents or great grandparents of mine?
I believe so, especially if they didn't move it while they were here.
Okay, so that certainly implies something genetic in nature.
Yeah.
So are we saying that the unconscious then ties into the genetic structure within the cells of our body?
Yes.
I mean, I've done a good bit of work on that idea, not as a biologist or anything like that. I don't have that credential.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, we probably don't have time for me to get into the story, but I just want to say that I believe that I had an experience a few years ago where I moved energy and gave some healing to my great grandfather and my grandfather just by hearing a story about their lives and then something that occurred between me and my grandfather when I was a child, and being able to know all that information as a grown man and get on my knees and pray for their forgiveness to each other and my forgiveness towards my grandfather for the incident that happened. I feel very blessed to know that, it's what people describe as ancestral healing, and not many people get the opportunity to know the information about their people that far back. But you still can do that without knowing. And that's where your connection to the higher power is important. That if you're having these conversations of like, I don't know what they've been through, but I'm sure it wasn't easy. And I acknowledge that no matter what, it took a lot of love and light for me to exist. And I want to give my appreciation for that to those people, no matter what they went through or what they may have done to me while they were here or to each other. And just you can put that energy out, even if you don't know their stories, and just acknowledge that it wasn't all
well,
perfect
yeah,
and beautiful along the way.
I think what's more interesting, just thinking about the possibility that we do live forever. Although I will not forever be the me I am now. I'll
Yeah.
be some other me, and I was some other me, and whatever I might be carrying unconsciously from that is its own regard. But still, the personality that somebody creates lives in this world. So I could surmise that while you felt you were talking to your grandfather, that you were talking to the essence of your grandfather that was left here. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Now, that's not to say that then it must not be that you aren't talking to your actual grandfather's soul, because we could say that maybe a soul hangs out for a period of time or transcends linear time.
Yeah. It was such a unique experience that I did literally feel weight that I didn't know I was carrying come off of my shoulders. So I feel
Okay.
like that was like their thank you and their forgiveness and appreciation for what I said, and
Now,
it
were
just
you able
was
to
gone.
reveal to yourself the unconscious content connected with all that?
Well, yeah, like I said, I didn't know I was even carrying that. I didn't know that I was still holding the weight from the incident that took place like 35 years previously between me and my grandfather, and I had no idea that what he had been through when he was a child at all until that moment. So there was just a lot of movement that I just didn't see coming, and was so grateful for it when it was over, though, that we had connected that way after years of him being gone.
Well, yeah, that in itself must be an amazing feeling. Um, so, with well, could you give us an example, say anonymously, of a patient that you could kind of make up hypothetically? You're examining their eyes and you're finding a certain subconscious predisposition. How would you be talking to that patient?
Yeah, so a lot of times it's kind of like, here's what I see, and here's what this means and or could mean, and then they have to acknowledge and start talking to me, about they can't just they have to tell their story too for it to connect the dots. So
Right.
one of the good ones that I have is that there was we're talking about left eye and right eye, feminine and masculine polarities here. And there's one particular that in the right eye, there was a lot of significant orange pigment associated with the pancreas, and the thoughts and emotions associated with that are grief and sadness. And then there was also brown pigment specifically on the liver area in the right eye, which was going to be associated with anger and resentment. And this particular woman had went through her life with losing her father in an accident that involved alcohol when she was really young. And then later on, going through life and ended up losing her husband in her 40s from liver failure from abusing alcohol. Now, obviously, everyone who has a brown pigment in the liver, that's not going to be exactly how it works. And obviously, everyone who has grief and sadness that shows up as orange pigment in their eye is not going to have that same story either. But it was really like a wow for both of us that was her soul path. That is what she was born with. She
I've
came
heard
into this world.
stories like that before, even of children, bearing scars from where they were injured in a past life, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And so,
and
and
so
she's
she could,
carrying
she
that from her mother as well, because her mother lost her husband. It wasn't her just losing her father. There's a lot of people involved in that whole process that's showing up in the eye, and it's just really remarkable.
Well, there's the old joke that, men really marry their moms and women really marry their dads. The dad gives you the template for the man and mom gives you the template for the woman. And that's where the kid's starting out, genetically.
Yeah.
you know. But also, I was very interested in the eye chart. I liked it a lot. It reminded me of some hermetic wheels. When they can get very very articulate in those wheels, and doing lots of levels and lots of symbols, uh,
Yeah.
and your whole thing, even with what's on your website and what you're talking about here today, a lot of it goes just like a psychic reading. You're connecting, you're using the iris and your intense understanding of the iris to make that psychic connection with your patient. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I wouldn't deny that there's not intuitive aspects to it, but there is an art and science to it. Like it is, a actual chart that is associated with the location of each organ in the eye and stuff like that, and you can identify whether or not you are born with a strength or a weakness in that area, like without the psychic connection. But yeah, there definitely are times. I mean, you're talking about an iris is more unique than our fingerprints. There's no two alike in the world now or has ever been. It doesn't matter if people are twins or whatever. They're very unique. I don't know of anything more unique than irises. So every time you look in someone's eyes, it's a brand new journey that is theirs, that is they've come into this world with. And so that's always something to me that it's like this work will never get old. It doesn't feel like work to me anyway. I don't even like referring to it like that. This practice, this passion, blessing of being able to look in people's eyes is like I'll never do just go, oh, okay, let me go over here to my file cabinet and just hand you this report because I've seen this one before. You
Mhm.
start from scratch every time. It's pretty amazing to know that no matter who I see tomorrow or next week, it's all brand new and it feels good to step into that role and it's an
Well,
honor.
you seem to project an empathy just in your appearance, in your countenance, I should say. And I'm sure with that natural empathy, you make easy connections with people because it seems to be so. And I wasn't trying to deride it because, I'm a tarotist, I'm an astrologer. So I understand that psychic connection. And I find it fascinating that because, when I'm doing a chart or card reading, I'm using that as a means to connect to the person psychically. I'm not reading anything that's actual. If anything, it's all abstract, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you're reading, a physical part of the body, part of an organ, even in the body. And so there's a physical connection in that I don't think that tarot or astrology has. And for you to take that same approach, and uh, the holistic idea of blending, mind, body, spirit, soul, that whole thing, I think really makes you present a very interesting, art and science. And I like that you say that as both, because that's what we say in magic. It's an art and science, and it's a
Yeah.
psychic science. So we're after the same thing, just different symbols. Now,
I was asked recently to try to connect iridology with this fire horse year that we're in, and that's something that I'm stepping into over the next week or so to possibly give a speech about it. And it's like I haven't educated myself enough on the fire horse year other than to know that things are moving fast. And it just has a really the time is now vibe. And that's kind of where I'm going with it, I guess, is that there's no better time than now to take control of the
I
path
didn't
that's
I
in your
didn't
eyes,
catch that
than
phrase, fire horse year.
yeah, is that not the year that we're in, the Chinese zodiac of the fire
Oh,
horse
oh,
year?
okay. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with the Chinese zodiac, so forgive me.
Okay. Well, then I'm not qualified to speak on it either. I was
I know I was born in the year of the rat, and what can I say? I look a little ratty, I think.
yeah.
Um, I liked very much your description of how you came to iridology. And I was thinking at the time of my own approach to the tarot many, many moons ago, when I got into it. It sounded interesting. Look for it, then it was okay, but it wasn't really kind of a priority for me. And some time passed by, and then all of a sudden, boom, there was a reason to do this. I got it, and I'm interested in capturing your feelings in that experience.
Well, so I think the thing that pulled me to it originally is that I'm definitely the black sheep of my family. You could even argue of my community and things like that. So there's that, and there was so I struggled with alcohol for years because I ran from that calling of being unique and being different and standing out, the way I do as an iridologist and stuff. And so there was a part of it that it was nagging at me to the point that I would drink to numb it. And so I didn't really, even after I talked about going to school with Pesic in 2014, it really took the earth shattering of 2020 to fully step into this as a full-time iridologist and start a business with it and everything. I had to burn the whole house down basically. I got divorced, I got sober, I went through what everybody else was going through with COVID, and I finally said enough is enough. I can't suppress this anymore. I'm gonna feel every bit of this, no matter how painful or uncomfortable it is. And I stepped into my role of this calling that's been there probably since I was a child. I'm not saying I was being called as an iridologist as a child, but I was definitely being called to step into this other world that
I
is
think
unique.
when somebody finds their inner genius, like you're showing here, we do trace it back to our childhood, even though the sophistication of what we're doing right now is something the child could not have imagined.
Hmm.
It still comes out of that same emotional place. It's always been with you,
Yeah.
you know. And that's what we really try to show here at our church because that's your genius. That's the thing that moves you. That's what makes you want to get up and deal with today, and just go at it. And you're not really worried about tomorrow and don't give a damn about yesterday. Right now, you're living in the moment of that sheer joy. For me, it's the generation of ideas and I live for it. It's a tremendous thing to me, and everything else can kind of go sour. Just let me let me continue my line of thought. Now I don't want things to go sour. So far, I'm eating roof over the head, whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I feel you.
So, why don't you tell us about Dr. David J. Pezek?
Well, I mean, other than the way he started out with Bernard Jensen and the fact that he incorporated his, psychiatry skills and stuff like that, I mean, he's got students and at least online courses and that's connected to 60 countries. Um, and very unexpectedly and surprisingly, I guess it was a year ago in February, he passed away. And it was a real like a freak accident. He fell while running is the information that I have about it right now, and just didn't recover from the fall. And it was really, really sad to see him go. And it's like I've felt that a lot lately, that the elders are moving on. And it's like I've seen that with, I'm a fan of Wendell Berry, the poet from Kentucky, and he's in his 90s now. And you think of some of the spiritual teachers, even Ram Dass was gone years ago, and um, he kind
It's up
of,
to each generation to make its own connection with the divine.
yeah.
You know, and,
And he did preach that. He one of his last videos was just emphasizing that you're divinely protected. And I think it was, during COVID, and to not get wrapped up in everything, that you're going to be okay. You're here for this. You were here to be for you
well,
were,
if especially as we get a little older and we do see, our heroes and mentors dying because they were older than us to begin with.
yeah,
So at some point you have to stand up and take the reins and say, I'm going to fill that hole or I'm going to tunnel my own way and be one of those lights in the world.
yeah.
You know,
I've really felt that a lot lately.
I think that's a good thing. I think that's the entire key. Now, it doesn't have to be as glamorous as being, an iridologist or a great anything or other. It can be, being a great parent, being a great friend. It can be being a great janitor and being a great, motorcycle driver.
Yeah,
It,
I agree. It's
you
about
know.
being present for the life that you're in right now.
Yeah, and the life that you're in, a lot of that was still came from that well of desire. Mm. Okay, this new program has it, so it's warning me now that we probably are about to run out of time, which is a nice way to have things happen. So before it just shuts down on us, let me say very much thank you. Kyle, it's just been great. Kyle Mays, the iridologist. I'm going to put the links to your program in when we post this program up to your website so that people can contact you. But I really do appreciate you being with us and spending some time with us. Uh,
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the invite.
Good. So, and to everybody watching, I hope you really enjoyed this program as much as I did, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Take care and be well.